hearing anybody.
Hello, Phil.
Hi, there we go. Hi,
I
how
still
are
owe
you?
you. I owe you an email. I haven't forgot about you, about the vehicles that we discussed on the phone. So don't worry. I will be sure to send that. I just
Okay.
haven't gotten there yet.
Uh, I'm patient. It's been
Okay.
a crazy start of the new year anyway.
I
So
know. And we're really, I just talked to the gal that helps us with the titles. We're trying to get that title from DSI over to turn as quickly as possible because I don't want you having to rent vehicles. So we're working
Okay.
on that.
All right.
So sorry
Cool.
about the delay. It's the titling is always the worst part. The DMV just is a difficult place to work with.
Well, currently we're leasing a van there, so we don't have to give it back yet. So we can
Okay.
go month to month.
Okay. Well, I'll try to get it. My plan is to get it to you as soon as possible. So
Okay.
just know that we're working on that title.
All right.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
No problem.
Alec.
Okay, I'm going to give a couple minutes for people to join. We're missing a lot of people. So I just sent an email out. Hopefully more people join.
If you have to do this just for turn, we had two people go through it on Tuesday, so
Can everyone see the screen I'm sharing, the slides? We've got 14 people. Let's give it just another minute because I'm expecting about 25 people. So we'll see. Okay, I'm going to start taking roll since people are coming in. We have Andy Curry from Roads to Independence is here. Susie is here. Gary Tippett is on. I see Dora with UTA. Doug Larson is here. Jessica Tanner with First Up House. Kayla's with Greater Salt Lake Municipal Services. Is that correct?
Yes.
Let me know if I'm wrong. Okay. We have
Phil Shumway with Turn Community Services.
Thanks, Phil. Here. Check. some of these names I don't see on the sign up sheet. Let's see. Shay Ballard. Shay, who are you with? Shay Ballard.
I think that's Sandra Curcio.
Oh, thank you. Got it.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, thanks, Sandra. And then we've got Dean with Ogden City. Hello. And I realize screen names can be wrong if you're signed in as someone else, huh? Who is with the screen name Dolce Dario? No, nobody. Gloria Castanet, sorry, with Utah Promise 2-in-1. Got you.
It is, yes. Thank you.
Let's see. What else do we have? Russ is here. Always here. Okay, I'm going to say the ones I think I'm missing. Speak up if you are here. Melissa?
Matthew, oh, I was just gonna say Matthew Starley. I'm here with the MSD also.
Okay. Matthew. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Melissa's not on yet, correct? What about Tech and Dan with Community Building Services? They were here for the in-person, so they're probably not across the line. Oh, and then I see, okay. Camp Christopoulos is here. Oh, Dora is on. Brittany Gomez with The Road Home. You're on.
I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. Hannah Ratcliffe with Odyssey House.
I'm here.
Okay. Let's see, Salt Lake County's here. I saw Susie on. Susie, is Kathleen Badeau with you also?
I'm just waiting for her to get on. I'm not sure if she's on yet, but I know she said she was going to come.
Okay, just checking. Levi Webb with Neighborhood House. I think I see you.
I'm here.
Okay. And then Frederick Gonzalez with United Way of Northern Utah. No. Okay. Gina Bertelson with Orem Senior Friendship Center. Or Haley Hickman with Provo Recreation Center. No. Okay, I'll leave those ones off. Trista or Christy, if you see some people trickle in, will you just keep note of their names so I can make sure that we include them as an attendee?
Yep, I'll keep track.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I just sent the invite to somebody who emailed me trying to attend as well, so they may be jumping on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Alika Lindsay, and I'm the 5310 grant administrator. So I will be overseeing the application process. If you have questions or need help, you can reach out to me. I'm going to do this workshop a little different than the in-person one, because in person we just kind of asked questions as we went, and it went over time a little bit, which is fine. But for online, since we're recording this and stuff, I'm going to ask that you save the questions for the end. That way, if we go over time, people can leave if they need to without missing vital information. We're going to go for an hour, and then we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back and try to finish it up in another hour. If you have questions and you don't want to save them for the end, you can put them in the chat, and then we'll get to them at some point. But first, right off the bat, I had some questions in the sign-up sheet that I thought were good questions, and I wanted to address them before we get started. One of the questions was, what does UZA mean? UZA means large urbanized area. So there are 3 large urbanized areas in Utah, and UTA oversees the 5310 program for those 3 areas. All the other areas in Utah are considered either small urbanized areas or rural areas, and those are run by UDOT's 5310 program. So if your agency is not within the UZA, the large urbanized areas in Salt Lake or in Utah, sorry, then you have to apply to UDOT for funding rather than UTA. So UTA only oversees the funding to the 3 large urbanized areas. Those urbanized areas are the Ogden-Layton area, the Salt Lake City area, and the Provo-Orem area. Those maps are on our website and also in the application guide that I sent you. But there are some kind of, the ones in the application guide are kind of difficult to see, street names and things like that. There are some newer maps on the website that are a little more clear if you need an exact address and you want to see like exactly what streets you're looking at. And then the other question I got was, what does a mobility manager do? Some people thought that a mobility manager might be like a fleet manager, but it is different. A mobility manager is kind of a role that the FTA came up with. And the role of a mobility manager is to facilitate coordination in the area between public service transportation providers and private transportation providers and everything in between. It was created by the FTA and the CCAM, Coordinating Council on Access and Mobility. The person is the role of the mobility manager is a centered approach to transportation. And the idea is that they will kind of act as a case manager for transit services within the community. So if you want more information about mobility management, I can provide you with that, because we do offer funding for mobility managers, but they are not a fleet manager. They wouldn't work specifically for one organization. They kind of help with other organizations, linking them together throughout the state and their urbanized area. So we do have some in Utah. If that's something that you want to discuss with someone, let us know. Okay. So to start, this is the 5310 application workshop. The 5310 FTA section is a grant for enhancing the mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities. I'm going to go over a brief introduction, the grant cycle and timeline, what funds are currently available, and then we will talk about the application a lot, the different sections of the application, and then we'll talk a little bit about the award process and how scoring goes, and then a little bit of what is expected of you post-award. We won't go into a whole post-award because that is another training that you get after you are awarded. So here is a brief overview of the application cycle. Actually, I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm going to tell you, so UTA was designated by the governor to oversee the urbanized areas, like I said, for the 5310 program, and UDOT remains overseeing the other areas. So that is why UTA is doing this, is the governor years ago asked UTA to take on this project or this program so that UDOT wasn't doing all of Utah, and so that we could help have more of a discussion in the communities when it comes to public transportation and how UTA can work with you guys and nonprofits in the area and government agencies that provide services to seniors and people with disabilities. So if you have any questions about that, write them down or put them in the chat and we will get to those. So first off, in our grant application cycle, okay, sorry. We start with the notice of funding, which was sent out on January 15th. And then the application workshop, which this is the application workshop. So thank you for attending. After this workshop, you can submit your pre-application. After your pre-application is approved, then you can work on your final application. Then applications are scored and the local coordinating councils in each UZA look at those scores, and the GMAT, which is people that are in the LCC, local coordinating council, and in the area, but they are not applicants. In the Salt Lake and the northern Ogden-Layton area, they will have a GMAT, and that group of people will look. Oh, you're good. Your stuff's here. I messaged you. You're good. I put your here so you come back. Sorry, where was I? Scoring LCC. So that those groups, the GMAT groups, will then review the scores and make final decisions. In the Provo Orem area, it's a little different because their local coordinating council voted to make those decisions together as a group. So in the two northern areas, the GMAT makes final decisions, and in the southern UZA, they make those decisions as a group. Okay. And then once that's decided, award letters are sent out. And then after that, we wait for the FTA to approve those awards. Once the FTA has approved all of the awards, grant agreements can be signed and sent out. And then we will do a post-award training. That is where we get more specific in your expectations after your award, your quarterly reports, all your reporting and what is expected of you. If you have a vehicle that's funded by the 5310 program, you will get vehicle training and training on our system called Ride Pilot, which is used to track all of the vehicles and the preventive maintenance and your trips and all of that information. Once you're trained on all that, then you'll have your vehicle delivery, and eventually the project will be closed out after all funds are spent and all vehicles are procured. And then the cycle starts again. And we do a 2-year grant cycle. So you will be applying for 2 years of funding at one time. The pre-application is due Friday, January 12th. This is taking the place of a letter of intent. So a long time ago, you would just write a letter of intent and mail it in, and basically telling the grantor what you planned on applying for, and they would tell you if you're eligible and if that amount of funding sounds good, and help you figure that out before you apply. So instead of doing it that way, we have an online pre-application through Zoom Grants. You click the link. It is currently open, so you should be able to go in there and get that started as soon as you want. You will tell us your entity type, what areas you serve, what type of project you want to apply for, the number of vehicles, and I can show you that at the end. I'll show you what the pre-application looks like. And then you don't have to give us your full budget in the pre-application, but we do want to know kind of what amounts do you plan on asking for in each category, so that we can tell you if we think that that is a good amount, if you should ask for more, less, that kind of thing. You will also need to give us a summary of your mission and the transportation services you provide, so that we have a brief understanding of your programs. So all that is due January 12th. Then the 15th through the 20th, we will reach out to you and notify you if you are not eligible, so that you can ask us questions. We will let you know if changes need to be made to your pre-application. Once your pre-application is approved on the 22nd, then you will get a notice, and you can go back in, and the other tabs, which I will show you, will open up, and then you can fill out your other full application and upload your documents and all of that. But you won't be able to, you can see those tabs in the pre-application, but you won't be able to fill anything out until your pre-application is approved. Wednesday, February 8th, applications are due, and the portal will close at midnight. I did that on a Wednesday on purpose because people tend to wait till the last minute and then call me freaking out because they can't get it to submit. So that's why we're not doing it on a Friday. So yes, it will be in the middle of the week. Please submit your applications before Wednesday. So if you have any problems, you can get assistance from us and it won't be as urgent. February 1st through March 10th, we will be reviewing the applications and we will start scoring them. And then March 10th through the 20th, that is when we will open applications for corrections if needed. We can't tell you exactly what to put in your application, but we might read a question and say, ooh, we don't think that they understood that question, or maybe they were confused, or maybe they uploaded the wrong document on accident. So we save aside this time to be able to tell you so that you can go in and fix something that may have been a mistake rather than just rejecting your application altogether. So that gives you a chance to fix things, and then the portal will close again Wednesday, March 20th at midnight permanently. March 21st through April 4th, we will be doing our final scoring and ranking and developing the POP, which stands for Program of Projects. The Program of Projects is basically just an Excel spreadsheet that lists all of the awardees and how much money they're going to receive and what items. That is given to the FTA to tell them what our final award decisions are. And the FTA reviews and approves that before we can send out grant agreements. April 5th through April 17th, the GMAT, which I talked about in the Ogden-Layton and Salt Lake UZAs, will review the scores and make final decisions. And in the Provo-Orem UZA, they will discuss it together as a group. The local coordinated, or sorry, no, that's April 22nd through the 26th is when that's done. So April 5th through the 17th, we will provide the GMAT with questions, or sorry, we will provide you, the applicants, with questions that the GMAT has about your application. That way you can prepare to present your projects on April 22nd through the 26th at the local coordinated council meetings in April. They will be 3 separate days, I believe, is what we decided on. Sorry if that's not right, Krista. 3 separate days. Applicants will present to the GMAT and address questions that they had. The GMAT will stay after about an hour to discuss and make final decisions on the program of projects. Then in June, we have another local coordinated council meeting. The final decisions are shown on the program of project. And if you disagree with your award or you want to learn more about how your application went, you can contact us for a debrief. And we can't like show you everything that GMAT wrote and the scores and stuff, but we can review it with you and tell you what areas of the application could be improved for next time, or what you were missing, and what your scores were in each section. And I will show you what those sections are and what the points are worth in each section. Then you'll receive an actual award letter. We send those in the mail and by email. Then we submit that program of projects to the FTA. Now, this is when the timeline gets a little flexible because we wait on the FTA. We have to wait for them to give final approval on our grant awards. Once they approve that sometime through July to November, we think, then we will send out grant agreements to be signed. Then your projects can start. Post-award training workshops are typically held in the fall in September. And then October is a busy time for us because while we're working on your projects beginning, we're also closing out old projects, and we're doing something called MPR, which is a milestone progress report to the FTA. Trista Lawrence does all of that for us. Some of you may know her because she used to be our compliance officer, and she currently runs the local coordinated council outreach, and she's doing a lot of community outreach now. So you should get to know Trista through that. But she also is submitting all of your reports to the FTA. Well, I guess Christy and Trista. All right, so that was a lot of information, but we will kind of come back to each little thing through the presentation and talk about them a little more. Next, we're going to talk about the apportionments. I said appropriations, but I think I mean apportionments. I get those words mixed up. The Salt Lake City UZA, the Ogden-Layton UZA, and the Provo-Orem UZA. Each pot of money is decided through the census based on the populations in that area. 10% of each portion is given to UTA for administrative purposes. So that is what this breakdown is. And then traditional projects has to be 55% of that pot. So traditional projects, I will show you, are more capital projects such as vehicles. It can also be preventive maintenance. It could also be third-party contracting with a transportation company. Non-traditional projects are volunteer vouchers and operation reimbursement. So I know it's a confusing term, but traditional just means what the 5310 program traditionally was for, which was vehicles only. But now the FTA has expanded a little bit, and they also offer non-traditional projects, which are operating assistance. Operating assistance can cover things such as fuel, driver wages, insurance on your vehicles, things like that, that help you operate your program directly. They do not cover certain indirect costs that do not help run that program directly. The 2024 estimated apportionments are estimated because we don't have those final numbers yet. The FTA has said they may have the final numbers January 19th, so we will see. Once we have those final numbers, I will update all of this and send it out again. But this is our estimated at this time. Also, the UZA boundaries that are currently on the maps, we have been told they're still in negotiations right now with our metropolitan planning organizations to try to determine what the final say is on those areas. Because when the census came back, some of the areas were cut out of the urbanized areas and were now rural. And there's some debate on that. So we are waiting to find out if the FTA and the Federal Highway Administration are going to go with the census data maps or if they are approving new maps. Once we have that information, I will also send that out and share that with you. But we should know the final decision before applications are due. So we shouldn't have to undo any awards. Hopefully we have all that information ready to go. The only areas that I saw that could be affected were up near Bear River Association, the Bragg area up north, and then down in the Provo-Orem UZA, there were a couple little spots that were cut out. So we're waiting to see if they negotiate those back into the UZA or what's happening. So if you're somewhere along those borders or you've looked at the census maps and you're worried about your agency maybe not being in those new census maps, we can definitely watch for that, look for that, and let you know if you're eligible. You can email me and let me know, hey, I'm someone my agency is in one of those areas that might be cut out, and I just want to keep tabs on what the updates are and make sure we're eligible. Okay. Hold on, I need a drink. Okay, moving on. Grant writing. So to be eligible for this grant program, You must be either a nonprofit, 501c3 certified, or a state or local government entity designated to serve seniors and or people with disabilities, or a state or local government entity with proof certifying that no other nonprofits in your area provide that service. There is one exception to that rule, which we in Salt Lake have expanded, which is the private taxi companies who provide shared ride services can be contractors with a state designated to help with those trips. So right now in Salt Lake City, we are working with Ute/Yellow Cab, because they are now the same organization, to help them get accessible vehicles to do like airport rides. And I know they're contracting with the Road Home and some other people, because taxi companies, they have a hard time getting accessible vehicles. And currently there was only, I think they only had one accessible vehicle when they approached us. So now they have more, and we're getting them more vehicles so they can do more airport trips. And that's been a really successful program. So if you're an agency that's interested in contracting with a private taxi company, Yellow Cab is available to discuss that with you. So I just wanted to put that out there. Eligible project areas. You must be within the large urbanized area, which I discussed. Salt Lake UZA, Ogden Layton UZA, and the Provo Orem UZA. Those maps are at the back of the little packet that I sent you. And on the website, there are some newer map links, which I can show you at the end if you want to see where those are. But once again, those UZA lines might change, and we're waiting for final notice. But not for 2023. 2023 is set in stone. It's 2024 funding that may change. So if you are worried about it, don't worry about 2023 funding. Okay. Eligible projects. Traditional projects, again, are capital, vehicles, preventive maintenance, mobility management, which I discussed what that is. Third-party transportation contracts. So like contracting with Yellow Cab to provide transportation for your clients within the UZA. And we are open to doing other capital projects. In the past, we did a lot of small capital projects, especially through COVID, because it was really difficult to get our hands on vehicles. But we want to get away from that and start focusing on vehicles again, because that is the main priority of this program. So we also don't have construction projects listed here, because that is also something that's been really difficult in the past. We are open to discussing it with approval, pre-approval from us, but we mainly want to focus on these categories specifically. And I'll talk a little bit about how the local coordinating councils rank projects that are important to them as well, and how that plays into this. Non-traditional 5310 projects are operating assistance that is, again, getting refunded for things such as fuel, driver pay, grant management salary, fleet management salary, things like that, that you need to directly operate your program. Also, some government agencies do a voucher program that is also non-traditional, and that is for volunteer drivers. So if you're interested in learning more about that, Christy Allen has all the information on the volunteer driving programs. Okay, getting into vehicles. This is our estimated vehicle pricing for the upcoming years. Accessible cutaway buses have gone up significantly. However, we do have about 5 buses that we can get very quickly that will come in about $10,000 less. So we're looking around $140,000 for the first 5 accessible cutaway buses we get applications for. So if you were thinking about an accessible cutaway bus, but you don't want to wait 2 years for it to be built, consider applying now, because we have a few that are on a lot ready to go. So the first 5 applications we get for those, we can look at that. But otherwise, accessible cutaway buses, the price has gone up a lot and it is a significant wait to get those. Accessible transit vans have gone up from about 92,000 to 105,000. So we're doing a standard order for these now. We don't offer a ton of different things. They're pretty standard. They come with the high roof, the extended cab. They come with a standard number of seats. So if you want an accessible transit van, but you do need some kind of special, you have a special need, such as like, trying to think, what is it called? What's in my notes?
Different
Turbo
flooring
engine
and
or something like that. Please consider that when you're writing your application and build some more money into that ask. Accessible minivans, 75,000. For non-accessible, this could be non-accessible transit van or minivan. The minivans we're looking around 50,000 and the full-size transit vans around 70,000. For non-accessible sedan or SUV or other, we're looking at 35 to 50,000. So anytime you're requesting a non-accessible vehicle, first you are required to do an assessment of equivalent service and assign certification. That will be in the pre-application. So if you're planning on doing the non-accessible vehicle, make sure you look at that form and complete an assessment and upload that to your pre-application so that we can review it prior to you applying. So we can make sure that you are eligible to apply for those vehicles. If you want to look at that form, you just get onto the pre-application and you can download the form and look at it, or I can send you a copy. For non-accessible vehicles, kind of do your research and know what you're going to be asking for, because we're pretty flexible, but it depends what the dealer has. So if you come to us and say, I would like an SUV that's a hybrid, that's similar to this make and model, we can take that to the dealer and say, we are looking for this type of vehicle, and they can supply us with something similar that they have. We can only buy from state approved vendors. So you can't go find the vehicle on your own and, send us the link to buy it. We have to go through the state. Okay, I think that covers all the vehicles.
Just real quick on the vehicles. If you want special orders, again, when we put the RFP up, particularly for the transits, this is mostly towards the large accessible transits. We have a contract with a vendor that will have to follow through with for this cycle, well, for the last cycle. So I'm sending something in the chat, but all previous, if you had a Ford Transit awarded, those have been ordered. Just know that. They'll probably be here hopefully by next fall, but they have been ordered. We have a standard kind of vehicle that they bid on. So those vehicles are what they are. Anything moving forward, if you do want to make an adjustment, just keep in mind, it will take longer to get your vehicle. And I do not know by how much, because they're made on the line. They make them to order. So it can cause complications if you want something outside of sort of what we've already negotiated. I just want you to keep that in mind.
Thank you, Christy. Okay, other project requirements. Each project must address a needs strategy and project listed in the locally developed coordinated human services transportation plan. There's a really long title. Each UZA has a locally developed human service transportation plan, and they are on the website. You will want to have your areas ready when you are filling out your application, because I will show you what we're talking about when we say need strategies and projects, but those are listed in each plan on how they rank the needs of the area, what strategies and projects they want to fund in that area. So you have to make sure that your project fits into those, and in your application describe how it fits into those. I send out the link to them, but they're on the website. They do have a lot of pages. So to find this area, it's usually around pages 50 to 70. Okay. So each plan's a little different on the page numbers, but look around page 50 and I'll show you what that looks like. For local match requirements for your project, if it's a non-traditional project, so operating funds or vouchers, you must come up with a 50% local match. If it's a capital project or traditional project, you must come up with a 20% local match. Or if your vehicle ends up costing more than was budgeted, it can be more than 20%. That happened during COVID where vehicles came in above the costs that we budgeted. And there's not really anything we can do about that except ask for overmatch so that we can meet you to purchase that vehicle. You must specify the source of your local match and include a letter of commitment. So what we mean by that is in your letter of commitment, you can't just say, we agree to pay the $5,000 and then you sign it. You have to say where that money's coming from. If it's coming from internal revenue, if it's coming from your operating budget, if it's coming from donation, if it's taxpayer dollars, if it's coming from other grants, and if those grants allow you to use it as match. And if this grant allows that grant to be used as match, there's complications when you do that. So just be aware of the rules about match. You can also do in-kind match, but you have to get pre-approval for that. An example of in-kind match would be if somebody donated computers to my agency to run a dispatching transportation program or something. I could use the value of those computers that were donated as match to help us get a vehicle or something like that. That's just an example. If you want to do in-kind match, make sure that we see all the information in your pre-application and we discuss it with you and approve that match source. Coordination and participation in the local coordinating councils. You need to attend meetings if you're a subrecipient and you get the money. And also that affects your score on your application if you're involved and you attend those meetings. Because it's very important to our community to have everyone at the table and everyone discussing so that we can make your projects and programs worth the most to our community. So coordination and participation is really important, not only to your score, but to your program success. All right, writing a successful application, plan and organize ahead of time. Make sure you're concise and don't put too much fluff in your application. Be specific, follow the directions in the application and the application guide. Now, the application guide I sent you isn't totally complete. And if I make any changes or updates, I will send out another version before the application is open, but I just wanted you to have something with you that you could look at. I've taken out all the very specific screenshots of questions because we're still working on the questions and trying to figure out how best to word them so that they're not confusing. Not a lot will change with the application. It's just mostly the wording of the questions. Measurable outcomes and goals. We're going to talk about that more specifically. We're going to talk about milestones and goals and how to write good ones. Make sure you address all the requirements, plan your budget and justify your expenses, and try not to repeat yourself too much in the application. Okay, program measures. Write specific milestones and goals that you can refer to in your quarterly reports. So one of the post-award expectations is that you will fill out a quarterly report on Zoom grants throughout the course of your project, which is 2 years or more if you're waiting for capital, but typically you report for 2 years. Think, how will I measure the success of my program and my projects? Try and come up with quantifiable goals. We also ask you to report how many individuals you've served in a year. That's unique individuals, so you only count each client one time, and one-way trips. Please use specific dates as much as possible. We ask that you make SMART goals. And if you've never heard that term, what we mean by SMART goals is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. I don't know why this isn't moving when I move my slides. Okay. You want to answer the 6 W's, if you've heard that: who, what, where, when, which, and why. And that will help you have good goals. So, oh, it's not clicking. Okay, here's some examples of what we mean by a milestone versus a goal. A goal, again, answers the 6 W's. Here's an example. Our first goal is to lower our risk rating from high to low by December 30th, 2024. We will achieve this by implementing new driver policies, reducing our late and missing quarterly reports to 0, and ensuring our agency meets the federal general accounting principles by reviewing them with our accounting team. So this is a good goal because it has a date. It says what they're trying to achieve, who they're going to work with to achieve that, all the other stuff. It's a good goal. And then some examples of a milestone are, they're smaller goals, basically. They're like the stepping stones to achieving a goal. Signing a contract with a third-party transportation provider, spending all operating assistance funds, putting a new vehicle into service, hiring a new driver, and they have specific dates. Milestones are not set in stone. You can move them as your project goes along, and that is the purpose of the quarterly reports. So let's say these were my milestones in my application, and when I go do my quarterly reports, I can say, hey, you know, we didn't sign our contract by that date because this, and this happened. We expect it to be signed by this date now. So it's good to have specific goals and milestones because you can refer to them when you do your quarterly reports, and that gives us a good measurement of where you are in your project development, and it helps us with our milestone progress reports to the FTA, which in 2024 we have to do quarterly and annually. All right, moving on to the application process. I'm going to keep going until 2 and then we'll take a break. When you first get into your application, actually first, I can't ask you because we're not in a room together, but typically I ask how many of you have used Zoom grants, how many of you have never used Zoom grants before. So I'm just going to assume that like half of you have never seen Zoom grants, you don't know what it is. Zoom grants is a website, an online portal that we use for grant management and grant application. You will go to the website, and first, if your agency has never applied through Zoom grants for a grant before, you will create an account. Each agency will have one agency account, and then you can have as many individual accounts as you need linked to your agency. You need to know if your agency already has an account because you only have one SAMS government number, your UEI number, and that is how the system identifies you as a grant applicant. So you will enter your UEI as your agency, and then you can apply for grants that way. If you are new to your agency, but you know your agency has used Zoom grants before, you need to find out who your agency application contact is. Your agency application contact is the one who has to click apply, and then they can add you as a collaborator, and then they can hand it over to you and you can fill out the application. But when you log in, you're not going to see in your open programs view that you see on my screen, the list of open programs. You won't see it until your application contact has added you as a collaborator. So trying to think how to explain that. Also, your application contact is the only person that can click the submit button. Once you've filled out your application, they're the only ones that can click submit. You won't see that button. So you're going to be confused and you're going to call me and you're going to say, where's the button? I can't submit my application. Don't do that Wednesday night at midnight because I'll be asleep. So make sure you know who your application contact is. Make sure they know that you're filling out a grant application and you're going to need them to go in and push that button. If your grant application contact is no longer with your agency or you need to change that person, there are two different ways you can go about changing that. You can call Zoom Grants and discuss it with them over the phone and they can change it, or you can email them and CC me and just in your email say, we want to change it from this person to this person. This is their email address. This is their information. And then I can reply to that email and say, I approve this change. Then Zoom Grants will change it. They need permission from the grant administrator to make that change. So if you just CC me, I will give that approval. Otherwise, just find out who your application contact is, make sure they're involved with your application process and that they know you're applying. Also, after the application, they will also need to add you as a collaborator if you want to do things like submit invoices, fill out quarterly reports, upload documents. Okay. The pre-application, that is due January 12th. Excuse me. Okay, sorry. You fill it out on Zoom Grants. It will screen you for eligibility. Please be clear in what you're asking for. You'll tell us your vehicle type and whether it is a replacement or expansion. What I mean by that is if you're replacing an old vehicle that has met or gone past its useful life, or if you're just expanding services with that vehicle. If you're requesting a replacement vehicle, you need to know the VIN number, the odometer, the make and model, and how old that vehicle is. If you don't know that information, just apply for an expansion vehicle. We have to give that information to the FTA, even if it's not a federal asset. They still want to know all that information about a vehicle you're replacing just for their data and records. So in Zoom Grants, I'll show you there's a different place for you to list any vehicles you are replacing and give us that information. You will also tell us how much in operating assistance you plan on applying for, and you will identify your match source. Hold on. When I click here, it's not changing my notes. Okay. Pre-application. This is a screenshot, not of my pre-application, but of just a general one. I will show you what ours looks like later. You will see the pre-application tab. So when you log in and you click to that grant, it will take you to a page like this. You'll see these tabs at the top where the number 1 is. It says summary and then it says pre-application. Then there are other tabs, application questions, budget, tables, documents. You can't really do anything with those tabs until your pre-application step is approved. You will see the number 2, that is where your submit pre-application button will be. You will only see that if you are the application contact. After you click that, make sure you refresh the page and double check that the timestamp is there saying that it was submitted. You will also get an email confirming that you submitted. If you want to ask a pre-application question, if you see the little circle that has an A in it and it says ask a pre-application question and it's a link, that will send me an email. So you can click that link to send an email directly to me to ask a question, or you can just email me any questions that you have. Budget. Moving on to the budget, we have a new budget form, which I also sent you in your email just so you could look at it, maybe print it out and kind of see what it's going to look like. This is because we just don't get enough information from the Zoom Grants budget table. And then also in Zoom Grants, we like to change your budget so that it matches your award, because that makes it easier to track spending, I have found, like when you're submitting invoices and stuff, and it can be a little confusing when you have budget items you weren't awarded in that budget table. It's especially confusing when people have turnover and they look at that and they think that they were awarded things that they weren't awarded just because it was in their budget table. So the Zoom Grants budget table is now going to be used just for your main categories. And then we will change the amounts once you're awarded to match the categories and amounts of your award. But your budget form, which you will upload, will have a lot more information. It will have a justification for each section, and give the overview of each section. It's harder for me to go over it with you since we're not in person, but I will show it to you. So this is what it looks like. You will fill out what you're requesting for each year. So the first section is the operating section. And then you'll see further down, there's a total operating, and then it starts the capital section. And then you'll have your totals for your capital. And then one more down, you have your totals for your indirect costs. If you are submitting a negotiated indirect cost rate, we'll talk more about that in a bit. So make sure you look at that and get familiar with it so you can ask questions if you are unsure how to fill it out. When you download it in Zoom Grants, it is a Word document and you can add as many lines as you want. But I also had someone tell me, they said, we have 50 drivers. Do you want me to put 50 drivers in there? And yes, if you're requesting salary for 50 drivers, then we need them all listed, driver 1, driver 2, driver 3. But if you already have a spreadsheet with all their information and that's easier for you, you can just write C attached spreadsheet and attach that to. There's no limit on the documents you can attach in Zoom Grants. So I'm totally fine with you putting it however is easiest, as long as the totals are in here. And then you'll have your local, federal, total, and then if you look here, I have rate, hours, FTE, and fringe. FTE is, if you don't know what that is, you can just Google the formula, but it's basically a number 1 is 40 hours a week, and then that's like 100%. And then let's say I was working 20 hours a week, that would be 0.5. So it's just kind of a formula, a number that indicates if how many hours a week they're working. And then I also, it's not showing. Okay, and then here's a version that I filled out just to show you what it will look like if I added things. So you're gonna put the totals at the top. This math is wrong, sorry. This should be the total plus the federal plus the local, that's wrong. Ignore my math, but you're gonna fill out the numbers like that. And then position, driver full-time, and I put a 1 for FTE, meaning they're working 40 hours a week, their hours, their rate, and then I put a description and a justification, what that person does, and how they'll contribute to the success of your project or program. Okay. Then this is the budget table in Zoom Grants, what that looks like. So you'll have these different categories, and then you're just going to put the total project cost, federal amount, and local match amount for the categories. You don't need to break each one down like you have to in the form. I'm hoping that this form makes it easier for everyone and that we don't miss details about each category. Also, I want you to be aware that if you look at it, if you're doing mobility management wages, you don't include that in the top operation part. There's its own section for mobility management down in the capital section. And that is because it's a different percentage. Mobility management salary is covered at 80% rather than 50%. So it's not included in your operating budget. Same with preventive maintenance. Just so you know, if you can use operating budget for preventive maintenance. So like if I have a vehicle and I budgeted $200 a year for oil changes, but some like it got more expensive than that and I didn't budget enough, I can still charge those oil changes to my operating budget. I'll just get less back. So I'll get 50% back instead of 80. If you budget ahead and you plan for that preventive maintenance and you can work that into your budget, you will get 80% back on that. So if you have vehicles and you want to do that, it's very smart to consider how much you're spending a year on preventive maintenance stuff. Okay. And then let's take a break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about the fleet inventory and move forward there. Come back. Let's do 10 minutes. So come back at 2:10 at 2:10. Does that sound good? I can't hear you, but yes. Okay. All right. Okay. If everyone's back, we will get started. There were some questions I'll address really quickly, but we can talk about them more after. I saw some questions about the budget. And what Christy said is correct. You want your pre-application to be as close as you think you're going to apply for, but you can still change it in your application. It's more to just kind of give us an idea of what you plan on applying for and help us help you if we think that you're asking for enough money to cover your vehicles, or if you're asking for enough money to cover your operations, or if you're asking for something that we know is not eligible. That gives us a chance to tell you that. So that's more of the purpose of telling us numbers in the pre-application. But it can be an estimate. It doesn't need to be exact, and you won't be uploading your entire budget form with the pre-application. It's just a couple questions. So I'll show you that when I show you Zoom grants and we look at the pre-application together. So moving on to the fleet inventory, I got some feedback that the fleet inventory was a little repetitive in the past applications. So I'm trying to fix that. FTA requires a fleet inventory form, which we look at when we do a site visit. So instead of having you do 2 fleet inventory forms, I would rather you all just use the spreadsheet.
We drove over to Coronado and had an early dinner.
The spreadsheet that FTA requires, that way it's all in one place, and I will just have you upload that. You can download the form in the application and fill it out, or you can just upload one you already have filled out, but it has to have all of the headings that FTA requires in that form. Then the fleet inventory tab that's in the application will just be for the vehicles you are requesting replacements on. So if you're requesting a replacement vehicle, then you'll need to add that information in the table in Zoom grants, not in this one. The fleet inventory spreadsheet has to have all of your fleet that runs that program, even vehicles that are not 5310 funded, but still serve people with disabilities or seniors in your program. And then you'll indicate there if FTA funded those vehicles and if UTA holds a lien on those vehicles. When you get a vehicle from the 5310 program, UTA will be the lien holder on that vehicle's title for 4 years or 100,000 miles until it's met its useful life. Then we will release the title to you. And then you are the owner of the vehicle, but there are still some disposal rules with FTA when you dispose of that vehicle later down the road. We won't get into those weeds yet. I just wanted you to be aware of how that works. UTA kind of acts as if you got a loan for a vehicle, your bank holds a title or the lien on your title until you've paid off that loan. It's similar. We're the lien holder on the title until that vehicle has met its useful life of 4 years or 100,000 miles, then we release it. So you'll indicate that in your fleet inventory form as well. If you're filling out that fleet inventory form and you have questions, let us know. We can help you with that. If you're missing some information and they are 5310 vehicles, we can help you try to find that information. If they're not 5310 vehicles, you can just leave it blank if you don't know one of the categories. Okay. Risk assessments. UTA is required by the federal government to perform a risk assessment prior to awarding federal funding. It's hard for us to do a risk assessment on an agency that we don't know. So if you are a brand new agency that has never applied before, you will download and do a self risk assessment, which you will upload to the application. If you are a current subrecipient, you will want to upload the most recent risk assessment that you had, which would either be in 2022 or 2023. If you had a site visit this year, you had a new risk assessment done. We got to about half of all subrecipients this year. So probably 50% of you have one from 2023 and 50% of you have one from 2022. So whatever is the newest, the most recent one you have. And then moving forward, we're going to try to update those annually. If you are not sure or you don't know where to find a copy of your most recent risk assessment, email me or Jared Aranda, who is our compliance officer, and we can send you a copy of that. The risk assessment also allows UTA to determine the risk of giving you money and the likelihood of you completing the project that we're giving you money for. So if you're a higher risk agency, you're going to require more frequent site visits and more oversight from UTA. The risk level will affect your overall application score. This is the first time that we've worked it into the scoring process, because we wanted subrecipients to kind of get used to the idea of the risk assessment before we threw it into, oh, well, now you're scored on it, and it really affects your application. So now that we have been doing it for a couple of years, you know what a risk assessment is, this time it will affect your score, and I'll show you how the scoring will work. You must upload that with your application, which I already discussed. And just remember, if you're a new agency, it's going to be a different looking form. It's a self-risk assessment. You'll just answer the questions and upload it. And then we will do an assessment of you after. Risk assessments evaluate your entity on the following topics. They look at experience with federal grant management and federal money management. They look at legal risks. They look at your ability to communicate with us, tracking, oversight, stability of your agency, and focus on your program or your project. So, you know, do you have enough capacity to focus on this project? Do you have enough staff? That kind of thing. The risk assessment will now affect your application. Oops, go back. It has up to 20 points possible. So if you are a low risk agency, you will automatically get the 20 points. If you're a medium risk, you will get, I think, 10 points. And then if you're a high risk, I think it will be 5. I have to look, but I think it's like that. But if you're a low risk agency and you're a great subrecipient, you have no issues, you'll automatically get that 20 points. If we have identified areas you need to work on and you're worried about that, reach out to me, especially if you had a risk assessment in 2022, but you feel like you've improved since then. I can definitely look at that risk assessment and redo it and make sure that I don't have any, me or Jared, sorry, our compliance officer is Jared Aranda, make sure that he doesn't have any questions or issues with that risk score or rating, I should say. It's not really a score. Okay. Application. We're going to talk about the different sections in the application, your coordination, local match requirements. We will not go through exact application submittal instructions, but I'll show you some Zoom grants ones, and then we'll look at the pre-application together. We'll talk about eligible expenses, the vehicle section, and then the criterion scoring section. Okay. Your pre-application is going to have your eligible entity type. So that's what we went over, like, are you a nonprofit or are you a government agency? Describe your agency mission and the transportation services you provide, what populations you serve, UZAs, congressional districts you serve, and your project type, and then the type of vehicle you're applying for, and the amounts you plan on applying for. Not a full budget, just the amounts for each subject or project type. We're going to talk about the coordinated human service transportation plan requirements. And these are the sections on the application. I'm going to show you exactly what points they're each worth. This project work plan section, staffing, financial, technical, and implementation, that is the most important section on your application. So you'll want to pay special attention to that. That area has the most writing. You're going to give us your staffing plan. How do you plan to staff your program so that they can complete the project? Your financial plan, what kind of policies you have in place for financial success, what kind of oversight experience you have for federal money, technical, what kind of computer programs you're using, what kind of technical experience you have in managing a fleet, or if you're doing a tech project, that kind of stuff. And then your implementation plan. How are you going to implement this project? What does your timeline look like? What are your goals and milestones that we talked about? So that is the most important section, is your project work plan. It's your overall scope and the details of your entire project. The coordinated human service transportation plan section is what we talked about when you will look at your local UZA's plan, and you'll talk about how your project meets those identified strategies and needs and gaps. The commitment to collaboration section, that is just your LCC involvement and attendance. So, and maybe partnerships that you have. So you will be getting points based on how many meetings you attend and that kind of thing. And then risk assessment. Budget is not scored, but it is an important part of the application. And then your documents section also. So looking at the coordinated plans, these are each of the UZA and their needs and gaps that they've identified. So when you're filling out your applications, I said 50 to 70 were the pages earlier, but in my notes here I usually find them around page 46 to 51 of the plans. So all your projects must address at least one of the identified needs and or gaps in your area. So these are the lists of each area's needs and gaps. And then in addition to that, your project has to meet one of these strategies or more. You'll get more points if you can explain how your project meets all of them. And then proposed projects. Excuse me, your project has to be one of these projects that are listed in the proposed projects list. Now, this doesn't necessarily correlate directly with what we're going to fund, right? We can't always fund operations over vehicles because the program isn't designed to do that. But this is your coordinated plan for your area, not necessarily the plan for 5310 funding. So this is what your area thinks is the most important. So we're trying to help your area fix that basically with this funding. I don't know if that made any sense. Here are the regional objectives that are in all three UZAs. These are listed as additional support for the project priorities or strategies. Specific projects listed in the project sections of the plan will determine the priority of any particular project type. But if your project also addresses a regional strategy or project, you can give that information in your application as well. Okay. Now we're going to look at the documents that are required. I separated them to your pre-application documents and your application documents. So the documents you're going to have ready for the pre-application, which is due the 12th, are the document designating your agency to serve seniors. If you're a government agency, you should have that documentation. If you're a nonprofit, you don't need that. Your SAM registration. Every entity that applies for federal funding has to be registered at sam.gov and needs a UEI number. You can just take a screenshot if you type your agency into the SAM or you're logged in. Just take a screenshot of your SAM registration showing the expiration date. your SAM expires annually. So if you're not sure if you updated it this year, go make sure, because it can take a couple of weeks to sometimes to like get that process. So definitely make sure that you're updated with that. If for any reason you're trying to get it updated and it's not going to be updated by the time the pre-application is due, please provide us with as much information as you can, maybe emails from sam.gov or whatever it is, to let us know what's going on, so that we know you're working on it, but you just don't have an active UEI number, and we have an expectation of when that UEI number will be active. If you're a nonprofit, please provide us with a nonprofit determination letter from the IRS. I have examples of that if you're not sure what it looks like. If you're a government agency, we just need something that has your federal TIN number on it, just proof of that. Then your current W-9. And again, if you're applying for non-accessible vehicles, you need to complete the equivalent service assessment, which is a list of questions, and fill out the certificate. That is a form also in the pre-application that you can download and fill out and then upload it again. So we'll look at that together. For your final application, you will need a lot more forms. Your board authorization letter for grant agreement signing. Maybe you don't have a board, that's fine. You just need some kind of authorization letter from your agency saying, we approve this person to sign grant documents on our behalf. And then I also have a form. This is a new form. It's simple. It's just, you just fill it out with who's going to sign your grant agreement, what their titles are, and their email addresses, because we route it electronically now through DocuSign, and having this form filled out is just going to make that process much easier when we're ready to send out your grant agreement. So please fill that out and upload it, especially if you have multiple people that are signing a grant agreement. If it's just one person, that's easy. But a lot of times people are like, well, my attorney needs to sign it, and this person on the board needs to sign it, and then this person. And you can also tell us if you want them to sign in a specific order. So then we will route it to those people in that order. Your demand response ADA plan. If you do not have one, there is a template that you can download and use to create your ADA plan. EEO and public notices on your website. You just need to upload a screenshot of where your EEO statement is on your website. I have examples of the minimum that it has to say, if you need that. And then, you should have a place where you can download, where the public can see your plans or file complaints, or at least can see your complaint process on your website as well. So we just need to see that that's available to the public. They can find that information. Then you need your Title VI plan, which includes your LEP 4-factor analysis in it. There's a template also in the application. If you don't have that, you can use that template. Your driver training program. If you are a new applicant and you don't know what your driver training program needs to entail or cover, we have in our grant management guide, which I'll show you where that is on the website, we have a list of all the topics that your driver training has to cover, but also we have a really great free resource called National RTAP, and it's nrtap.org is the website. They have free driver training that covers all the topics that are required by the FTA. And you can even create accounts for all your drivers and then call National RTAP, and they can set you up with like an admin account so you can see when your drivers have completed that training. And you can also have them, oh, you need to redo your training annually, and it will send them like alerts or whatever. It's all free. they've set it up for us like that, and you are welcome to utilize that resource for your driver training. It's a great resource and I highly recommend it. We also on our website and on the National RTAP website have flashcards that you can print and keep in the cars if you want, or whatever that your drivers can use to refresh on those policies. We also ask that you upload driver and employee policies that you have in place, mostly to ensure things like your drug and alcohol policies, your cell phone use policies, how you're going to protect federal assets. If you are getting federal vehicles and drivers need to check in and out keys, where the vehicles are going to be stored, those types of policies. And again, if you don't have thorough policies yet, just upload what you have and we can give you feedback on how to improve those policies. If you need examples, let me or Jared Aranda know. We can send you examples of good policies. Your ADA Title VI notices to the public, those are different than your plans. Those are posters that you need to have in your vehicles. I have templates also on the application and on our website. The template you just can basically fill in with your agency name and you're done. It has our contact information at the bottom and you would put your officer contact information, and we have it in English and Spanish. The FTA asset inventory form we went over, that's your full fleet. Let me reiterate though, because I called it fleet inventory earlier and here I called it asset inventory. The FTA defines an asset as anything over $5,000 that the FTA has funded. So if you don't have to put all your assets, right, that you own, put all your vehicles that are in your fleet, but also if you have any FTA assets, like United Way, for example, has some vehicle lifts that were FTA funded to help lift their vehicle up so they can get under them and do maintenance in-house. Those have to be on their asset inventory form because they're over $5,000 and they were federally funded and they have a useful life. So we have to track them. Also, Ogden City is here. They're a good example because we did a sidewalk project once for them, and that sidewalk is now an FTA asset for 20 years. We have to go take pictures of the sidewalk and report that as an asset to the FTA. So anything that's over $5,000 that the FTA funded needs to be on that inventory form. Budget form, which we looked at, the FFATA checklist. This is a form you need to fill out if you're going to be asking for more than $30,000. If you also are an agency where 80% of your annual revenue is federal funding, or you receive more than $750,000 of federal funding annually, you also need to list each board member and how much money they make on that form. It will say that on the form, so you don't need to remember everything I just said. It's on the form. But if you're asking for over $30,000, fill out the form. And then if you meet any of those other things I said, you have to fill out one section of the form with board information. You don't have to fill out that section if you're not getting that much federal funding. Partnership agreements or contracts. We want to know about any partnerships that you have, or third-party contracts that you have with transportation providers, so you can include those. NICR, this is your negotiated indirect cost rate. If you do not know what that means, don't worry about it. If you have a negotiated indirect cost rate with a federal cognizant agency and you decide you want to use that for this application, you can. Keep in mind that negotiated indirect cost rates might define something as an indirect cost or a direct cost differently than our program does. For example, fuel to us is a direct cost because of the type of projects that we're funding. So we cover fuel as an operation expense. Your indirect cost rate could list fuel as an indirect cost. Therefore, you would only get reimbursed for that negotiated rate. So let's say your negotiated indirect cost rate is for 10%. Well, you would only get 10% for that item versus we say it's a direct cost, so it's 50. So just be aware of that if you're going to apply your negotiated indirect cost rate. And no, we cannot. I've had people like confused about, well, my indirect cost rate says that this is a direct cost. But if the grant says it's not a direct cost, then we can't pay it as a direct cost. So it gets a little fuzzy. Make sure that you read through your negotiated indirect cost rate, what it lists as direct and indirect costs. If you want to apply it, that is what we will use. I hope that made sense to the people that have that. You have to upload it with the application. The FTA has to approve it with the award, and it has to be included in your grant agreement. And then the last thing is direct deposit transfer. If you are receiving operating funding and you want it direct deposit, I have now just put the form on the application so you can fill it out and upload it. So we don't have to ask you for it later, and we can give that to our accounting team so that they can send you payments directly instead of in the form of a paper check. That is only for like operations or any reimbursable award. I know this is a lot of information, but I just wanted to go through all those documents so you know what they are and you're not confused when you see one. Okay, application submittal. I need another drink. Okay, and we're doing okay on time. Only the application contact for your agency can submit the application. We went over that. Be familiar with who your application contact is. If you need to change it, again, email Zoom Grants, CC me, I can approve the change. And the full application is due February 28th at midnight. Submitting your application. This is a little screenshot of Zoom Grants to show you what you will see with the full application. Where the A is at the top, that's where the refresh page button is. So after you submit, make sure you refresh the page and see the timestamp. You'll also notice there's a little box that says, by entering your initials here, you certify this application, blah, 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 blah. That will appear after you hit the top submit now button, and then your application contact will put their initials and then hit submit again. You will also get an email confirming that it was submitted. And another way you can triple check that your application was submitted is by this letter B, where it says my account home. If you go and click there, you should see, instead of in the open application list, it will be in the submitted application list. Okay. So I kind of went over the categories. This is how they're scored. Your full application is worth 100 points. And when we are doing the scoring, we meet for the LCCs and all that. Well, no, before that, you will have, I'll give you the, what's it called? Scoring sheet. So you can see how they're being scored, because I think that's helpful when you're thinking about what to say and what to write in the section if you know what they're looking for. So I'll try to get that out. I'm still kind of working on it. I'll get that out to you as soon as I can. But this is basically the points for each section. So your coordinated human transportation plan requirements, those are the ones we talked about. How does your project meet the needs and gaps? How does your project fit into these categories? That's worth 30 points possible. Then your commitment to collaboration, which is having collaborations in the community and attending the local coordinated council meetings. That's worth 10 points. Then the project work plan, which I talked about, that's the most important section of your application where you'll be doing the most writing. Each of these sections is worth 10 points, making the whole section 40 points possible. And then your risk assessment is worth 20 points. Okay. Again, grant agreements will be sent out in DocuSign, and there will be a form that you will upload with the names and email addresses of who will sign. This is just a reminder to read your grant agreement. It will include all expectations of your post-award and your agreed upon budget. It will include all the federal clauses that your agency is agreeing to. Federal clauses are not negotiable. It is what the FTA tells us. There are rules that are set in stone. Make sure your budget and scope in your agreement does match your award letter. That is negotiable. So if you see mistakes on your budget or your scope of work section in your agreement, definitely bring that to our attention before you sign it so we can discuss it and make sure it's correct. And then I'm gonna briefly talk about post-award expectations because I don't want you to come in and apply for all this money, but you have no idea what you're getting into or what's going to be expected of you after it's given to you. Post-award training is going to be required after you are awarded. This training will teach you how to submit quarterly reports, how to do your reports on your vehicles, and what the rules of the 5310 program are. Then you will be expected to submit quarterly reports and update us on your milestones and your goals and the scope of work of your project and how it's going. Trips and people served based on the type of project that you have. If you're not doing trips, then you don't have to report that. You are expected to use, we have a portal called Ride Pilot where you will report your preventive maintenance. You have to have a preventive maintenance plan, which we will help you have online in Ride Pilot. You have to report your trips and all of that no less than weekly. You can report it daily, but some people prefer to do it on paper, and then at the end of the week they put it all into the computer. Your odometer, you have to do pre and post trip inspections on your vehicles. And then again, UTA holds the lead on the vehicle until it meets its useful life, which is typically 4 years or 100,000 miles, whichever comes first. And then you're also expected to follow federal disposal guidelines when you're done with that vehicle. For operating assistant, you are expected to submit reimbursement requests on a regular basis, which can be quarterly or monthly, whatever is easiest for your agency. And you're expected to spend all of that money within 2 years or before the project end date, which is outlined in your grant agreement. You are also expected to be involved and attend the local coordinated council meetings so that you can be a part of that community and discuss and collaborate with your other community partners. We have 5 per year. 4 are like regular meetings, and then the 5th one is like a big one that we do all together. It's usually at UTA headquarters, and it's mostly so that different agencies can talk about the projects that they're doing. That one's really cool, and it's held in October. If you're not on our local coordinated council emailing lists, let us know and we can get you on that so that you know when the next upcoming meetings are. Trista Lawrence is the one who sends out those emails, so she can add you to that list. All right, now that I've talked a lot, we can move on to questions. Let me, and then let's do questions first, and then I can kind of show you the pre-application, okay? Or would you rather do the opposite if some of you need to go? Let's see, it's not quite 3. How about I show you the pre-application really quick? We'll just look at it and then we'll get into questions. Let me get back into Zoom grants. Nope. One. This one. Let me share my screen again. I would do that. Okay. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
No one's saying no. So, all right. So when you come into the pre-application and you've hit apply, you should see a screen like this. It's going to have all this information. You can click hide this if you already know and you don't care to read it again. You can hide this. Eligibility requirements. Here are your transportation plans. They're right there in the pre-application, but you can also hide that if you don't want it. And then you'll see these tabs. So it says application status not submitted because I haven't filled it out. Now, if you hit apply now, I don't know if that takes you to the pre-application, but you'll want to click the pre-application tab. Here's that ask button that I told you about. If you click here, it will send me an email. Eligible entity type, you'll just select that. And then provide a brief overview of your mission and transportation services. That's a 500 character limit, so that will be pretty short. Which populations do you serve? Which UZAs, districts? If you don't know, you can just Google that map. And then here you're just going to select what types of projects you plan on applying for. And then you can even do other and type them in if they're not there. And then here you're just going to put the number of items you're asking for, not the dollar amount. So I plan on asking for 2 replacement accessible transit vans. Then I'm just going to put a 2 in this box. So it says, please use numeric data only. Do not add commas or symbols. So I'm just going to put like a 1 or 2. And then if I have other equipment that's not listed, I can just put a number there and explain it down below. Here is where I'm going to put my total that I plan on applying for. Also, don't enter dollar signs or commas here, just numbers, or else it kind of messes up the system. And you're going to use the total project cost, your federal plus your local. If you want to, use that budget form first to kind of figure out what you plan on applying for, you can do that, but you don't need to upload it in this pre-application. You're just going to put your estimated for each category. And then if there's other reimbursable items, that. Now you'll notice vehicles are not in this section, right? Capital items are not in this section. That's because you told me above how many you plan to apply for, and then we just kind of know about how much that would be, if that makes sense. So really we're only asking how much operation money are you planning to apply for, or how much preventive maintenance money are you planning to apply for? And then if none of those categories fit, or you have others, or you want to get more information, you have 1,000 characters in this box to provide us with details about other projects you might want to apply for that are not listed. Please be as specific as possible. And I gave some examples here. Include the number of items, estimated cost, make and model of the items. If we have pre-approved in writing, or if you need to get our approval. And then if you're asking about a construction project, we need to know as much detail as possible, like will it require digging in the ground? Because that requires more environmental review by the FTA. And then number 10, are you currently or have you ever been disbarred or suspended from SAM.gov from receiving federal funds? I think that should say from receiving, I don't know. Anyway. And then here's where you'll upload your documents, and you can download the template for the certificate of equivalent service. I can show you that really quick. Maybe. Okay. That looks like this. This first page is the certificate. You're signing that you agree to the following. And then down here is the assessment. So you have to fill out the questions or answer these questions, analysis of existing fleet, your response time, trips, and that kind of stuff. And then just make sure that, this is to make sure that you already have the ADA vehicles that you need, and you're confirming that now you can get some non-accessible vehicles and still be able to serve the populations that you serve that need accessible vehicles. Okay. All right, I think that's all, and we can move on to questions.
Okay, I had one question. It
Okay.
was just on the SAM certification. Our agency normally has a March to March application for SAM. Would you think it would be wise for us to go ahead and re-up now, or just wait till March to do that like we normally do?
You can wait till March to do that,
Okay,
like normal, yeah.
all right, thank
Okay.
Hi, this is Kayla over at the MSD.
Okay.
I wanted to ask, so the Metro Townships are fairly new, and we are looking at creating kind of our first transit service to provide some kind of government assistance. We're looking at serving seniors, low income, persons with disabilities, and the general public. Would we still be eligible for these funds? And, is this something we can pursue, not having had a transportation service before?
Yes.
Okay.
You have to describe or tell us what your eligibility requirements would be, basically. And there's certain rules, like in the ADA plan, it spells out that you can't deny services. Basically, so if the general public is requesting a service, but someone who's in a wheelchair needs a ride, you have to prioritize that with the vehicle that we provide. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So there's certain rules about that, about you can't deny service, but you can have a transportation service that serves both.
Okay.
Christy, do you have anything to add to that? You might know more about that area.
Sorry, what was the question? Sorry.
They want to provide services to seniors and people with disabilities, but also the public. And so I was just saying you have to have eligibility requirements, and you can't deny service, but like,
I mean, with the vehicles, this is the thing. The vehicles have to be used mostly for, right, seniors and persons with disabilities. I mean, so it's not to say you could never use the vehicle for anybody else. But you probably,
trip. And
yeah, so
advice to separate those programs.
it probably, until you own the vehicle. I mean, things are a lot cleaner once you get the title to the vehicle, to be honest. I mean,
right.
So that's a hard one of, like, yes, you can do some here and there. But this is the thing, and Alika talks about a lot too, which is, but that vehicle's got to be available for the seniors and persons with disabilities. So in other words, you can't take somebody who doesn't qualify under those parameters for a trip if somebody else with, say, a disability needs a trip at the same time. You have to take those demographics of persons with disabilities and aging adults take priority over anything else.
Yeah. How does that work if we're applying for the operating funds? Because we have someone willing to donate the vehicle. So we would be applying for operations. Does it work the same way? Is there a certain way we would have to report it? It just seems a little tricky.
It depends on, I think, what you're using the operations for. So if you have a driver, for instance, I just think it's cleaner to kind of separate that. So if you're tracking your trips that you do with people with disabilities and seniors, and then you track general public separate, then you're only reimbursing for the hours they were driving those people. That would be cleaner. Maybe we need to meet to talk about the program more, because, and I would say read the uniform guidance on the 310 program. That might help clarify some questions, and then the ADA plan might answer some of that, because the ADA plan covers how you do an on-demand service and meet those ADA guidelines. So I think that might have some answers too.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it might be worth a meeting like offline to discuss all the details.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Thanks.
And then also that made me think, I forgot to mention fares. If your agency is charging fares, you have to subtract that from your operations. So how I've seen people do it is, you can tell us in your application that you charge for fares and how much, but when you're submitting for operations reimbursement, we require a cover sheet, and then you would just put on your cover sheet, you list your charges, or like, we're asking this much in fuel, this much in whatever, and then you'd list revenue and subtract that from the total of incurred costs. And then also the same with if you're getting DSPD funding or something like that, you would also have to show you're subtracting that other funding from those operations as well. If you're getting another source of coverage, so you're not duplicating the operation, you're requesting refunds from 2 different grants or agencies, if that makes sense. And then I'll look at these questions in the chat.
I have one other question, Alika. If we're planning to work with a third party, like we're talking about maybe working with United Way in Utah County to help with some of ours, do we have to coordinate that with them, or should we just put that in our pre-application?
Sorry, I'm having computer issues.
Do you want me to talk to that? I mean, I can talk a little to that. Phil, you can just get an estimate of what, like, I would talk to Gary over at and talk to them and get an estimate about what the cost would look like, probably monthly, so that you can have it, so you have a budget. But then, and then once you submit the grant, if that gets approved, we can, I think our thought was, I think can we do an MOU, Alika, like help them facilitate?
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, we could probably help you, or you could just do your agreement with United Way direct, like, yeah, you can work with them directly, and then you would get reimbursed.
Okay, and when we put that in our budget, it's the full amount, not just what we would have as a match.
Yes, put in the full amount. So if they're going to charge, say it was $100 a month, you would say it's $100 a month. Just know you'll be reimbursed at $80.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Except in the full budget form, you'll break that out.
Right.
But in the pre-application, yeah.
Pre-application. Okay, thank you.
Or Alika, before you jump to the questions online, I want to go back to what you said before the questions that Phil had. So if I understand correctly, we can use operations money to pay for drivers if that's all they're doing is driving the vans, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when we do that, we would include their salary, fringe benefits, and everything in that number for that line item? Okay, all right.
And then I've also had questions like, well, I have a fleet manager, or maybe they're not, maybe they do something completely different, but they tend to drive 10 hours a week. You could list them as a driver and just put that they work 10 hours a week driving and what the rate is for when they're driving, even though they have a different full-time position. Because I know a lot of agencies do that where they have different staff driving vehicles.
Okay.
And
we only have 3 vehicles, so, but still, just to be sure.
And then also back to the fares thing, if you are accepting donations or you say we don't charge fares, but we give a recommendation for donations, that is fine. You do not have to list donations as revenue on your operating budget, only if you're charging the clients.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Okay, I see a question from First Step House. What is the anticipated contract period of the grant? So typically projects start up, so they're pre-date. So how do I say that? Post, what's the term? They go backwards. So because you're being awarded previous year and year of, so 2023 and 2024, it would be backdated to, sorry, the 2023 funds would be backdated to October 2022 is how we've done in the past. But I guess it will depend on what they approve for my grant agreement when I put those dates in. I guess it could always change if someone at UTA doesn't agree with that date or FTA, but typically I backdate it to October of the previous year. So October 1st, 2022 to October 30th, 2023. That would be your first year. And then October 2023 to October 2024. The reason it's October is that's a federal fiscal year. That's what FFY means on the notice of funding. The federal fiscal year runs from October. So that's when we start and end projects. So you could when you get your grant agreement, it will tell you how far back you can bill operations. So if you're tracking that now, then when you get your grant agreement, you can get reimbursed for expenses you're incurring right now. Does that make sense? So yeah, it would be fall instead of July when you sign. That's when you sign the agreement, but you can back charge to whenever the project start date is, which is typically October. Is presenting to GMAT optional or required? It's optional. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but it gives the applicants a chance to answer questions that the GMAT might have, maybe to clear up confusion about their project, or just to talk about why your program is important. And I don't know, I've even seen people do a PowerPoint. You don't have to do that, but you're welcome to. The floor is yours for however amount of time we give each agency that wants to present. Is the budget just for FFY or is it for both years? It's for both 2023 and 2024. Do other projects need approval before the pre-application? It wouldn't hurt to tell us about it, but no, you can tell us about it in your pre-application and we'll review it and we'll tell you if it's eligible. How many vehicles is considered a fleet? One. I don't know. To us, it might be different to something else, but yeah, some of the agencies we work with are very small. So what definition of disabled is being used for this funding? No, that is a complicated question, but I see that it's Odyssey House asking. People that are in active recovery for drug or alcohol abuse are defined by the federal government as disabled. They have clarified that in the last few years. So Odyssey House, your clients, as long as they are in recovery and in the program, are eligible for those services. Does that answer your question? Hopefully. I think that was Hannah. Hannah, are you on? No, she left. Hey Trista, could you write her name down so I remember to email her the answer to her question?
Alec, I think she heard you. She said thanks in the chat.
Okay, thank you. I can't see all of it. Okay, is the budget form due? We talked about that. Do other projects need pre-approval? We talked about that. I will send out a copy of the PowerPoint.
Alec, before you get too far along regarding the grant, this grant that we're applying for, which wouldn't be funded until October of 2024, you're saying could be retroactive to October of 2023?
Well, typically they're awarded in the spring, and then you sign your grant agreement sometime between July to November, depending on the FTA.
Okay.
So as soon as that's signed, you can start billing us for your reimbursements.
Okay, all right.
So you don't
So-
have to wait until, I know it's confusing. The project start date is October of the previous year. So yeah, so it backdates. It will say that on your grant agreement. It will say like project start date, project end date. And you can bill back to all the way to your project start date.
Okay,
For costs.
that's good to know. So just whatever the project start date says, then that's what we,
Yep.
so if our project start date was, for example, November 15th, then we should start keeping track of whatever expenses we think starting November 15th, 2023. Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Yes, accessible transit vans seats are removable. They are on the Abilitrack system, and I think they come with like 12 or 14, something like that, seats. If you have questions about vehicles you're currently waiting for, Christy can give you an update on vehicles.
Alaka, the standard, I think the orders come with 10 seats. If they need more than that, they have to include it in their ask.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I can go down to the new messages here. Yeah, pre-award. Thank you, Holly. Pre-award expenses, yeah. Okay, I don't see any new questions. Does anyone else have questions that I missed?
I was gonna let Christy know that I did get an email about a waiting van, so from Jared.
Yeah, because we're working on that one. We have to get a new title. I know
Yes.
he was working with the DMV to try to get that figured out.
And he says that it looks like it's worked out now, and so
good.
we can schedule that next week. So that'll be good.
Yay.
Appreciate that. Appreciate your work on that. That's been
Yeah.
difficult, I know.
I'll be sending Christy an email.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope you're not over flooded with information. I know this training has been is a lot, but again, when I have the application questions solid, I will send out more information to you all. I will also send out these slides, and the website has a ton of information and resources. So if you haven't been to the website, it is rideuta.com/CMM, which stands for Coordinated Mobility Management. And then you can click on the 5310 page. And then we also have a resources page, which has every document you've come up with. It's got policy examples and all of that. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to me or to Jared. And then if you have questions about the LCCs, you can reach out to Trista. And all of our contact information is on that website too. At the very bottom of the page, there's a contact us section. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. Good luck on your applications.
Thank you.
Bye.